take a sheet, and I reached for my doggy bags only to realize I was fresh out. So I peeked around making sure nobody was looking. And I just left it. 10 minutes later I'm walking across the road and I cut through a thin grass median in the center, and what do you know? I step in dog shit. I wasn't even mad. I knew I deserved it. When I was a kid I threw a basketball into a puddle in front of a friend of mine, splashing him. I'm walking backwards, pointing and laughing. I then turn around right into a pole and knock myself out. I was at a party one time, and this one girl couldn't stop talking shit about this other girl that was coming to the party. The other girl shows up and this dude picked her up and hugged her and spun her around in a way where her foot kicked the girl that was talking shit right in the head face while she was sitting on the couch. Her beer spilled all over her and she caught a black eye. Sitting on a highway late at night because of a bad car accident. The highway was packed and barely moving. One guy thinks he's smarter than everyone else and tries to drive on the shoulder. He makes it a good little ways before running into an on-ramp. Also packed with cars. He had nowhere to go. And no one let him in. He was stuck between cars in the rightmost lane and cars from the on-ramp. Everyone stuck bumper to bumper and flowed around him. I went from watching him pass me and almost getting out of my view to passing him and losing sight of him in my rear view. I got rear-ended in a turn lane by a girl texting. She was doing 45 miles per hour and I was stopped. No major injuries. I went to her court date hoping she got a big fine or something. She got a $50 ticket. I was a little bit upset. As I was sitting at the stoplight to pull out of the court I watched her run a red light and bone a cop. I don't normally laugh at other people's misfortune. However, I laughed my ass off at that one. I was kicking a customer out for being racist and cursing at one of my employees. He yelled offensive stuff all and then he tried to slam the door on his way out. But it had one of those things on it that makes the door close slowly. He pushed it hard. It didn't budge and he slipped and fell on the floor. We had a good laugh. Last Saturday I was on a crowded Nick subway at 2 AM. Two drunk dudes. Young 20s. Lighting a joint and walking around flaunting it. One literally came up to me, "You think a pothead ain't gonna smoke a joint?" Whatever that means. The whole train kept ignoring them. And they kept parading around being a bunch of morons. They spotted two taller, athletic looking dudes and started making fun of them for looking like cops. It was the line, "Which one of you is the sergeant?" that finally put the athletic guys over the edge. They looked at each other, smiled, reached into their pocket and pulled out their badges. "Okay boys. Empty your pockets." The subway blew up in laughter. They would have gotten away with everything if they just didn't go bother the two plainclothes police officers. Score one for the good guys. And then I went home and smoked a joint in my living room. I was running laps on a grass field in the military when I was about to lap a guy who'd always lap the shit out of me. So as I passed him I yelled, "Gotcha, bitch," and immediately stepped in a hole in the ground and twisted my ankle. Despite the pain of jacking my ankle up, I thought the karmic payout was hilariously timed. When I was in first grade, my class had recess and this bully pushed me to the ground. I fell and was about to go off on the kid when this fourth grader came over, lifted the kid up and took the kid over to the principal. Karma is the shit. I'm from San Diego and during the summer, you have to acclaim bonfire pits on the beach really in the morning if you want it for that night. So my friends and I got to the beach at 8 AM and stayed there so we can get a bonfire going into the night. Just before sundown, this one couple asked if they could share the bonfire with us, and since our group wasn't too big, we decided to share it with them. However, that couple proceeded to bring a group of like 15 others and they literally surrounded the pit and pushed us out. We were pissed, but we were so tired from being at the beach all day so we decided to head out. Little did we know what that night had an extreme high tide warning, and when we moved all of our stuff over the wall that divided the beach walk with the beach, a huge wave came in and washed out that whole group surrounded by our bonfire. The wave flipped over their table of food, took a handful of sandals back into the ocean, and destroyed all their stuff. The best part was this one girl was trying to jump the wall to save herself, but she didn't jump high enough and ended up falling right back into the waters. Calm as a rick. When I was a kid, we visited Montreal. I had gotten the hockey puck as a souvenir. While we were in our hotel, my sister decided to mess with me by hiding it. I got mad and yelled in my high-pitched voice, "Give me back my hockey puck," before smacking her in the head with a pillow. Guess where she had hidden it? My dad kicked our dog because it was standing in front of the fridge and he wanted a beer. But as soon as he opened the fridge, the shelf that was holding the beer fell off and every single can busted open. When I was driving my Jeep very carefully in a snowstorm and someone in a Mustang passed me in an unsafe manner, he almost lost control of his car, which would have caused an accident that included me. Picture someone dangerously fishtailing right in front of you with an 18-wheeler coming at you in the other lane. Saw him in the ditch about 5 minutes later. Idiot. Neighbors on the balcony next door having a smashing time throwing bottles to the sidewalk. Can't get any sleep and I have to wake up at 7:30 a.m. Make the decision to get my rest and request officers to survey the scene. Watching from my window, I see 3 fratties picking up glass under the flashlights of 2 deputies. With this issue resolved, I guess you could say I called the karma police. I was working in a pub in Liverpool and had just arrived about 10 a.m. to start my shift. I knocked on the door and waited for someone to let me in. I became aware of some voices shouting and turned around to see 2 guys, shirts off, swaggering towards me talking in a language I didn't understand. They came right up to me and what little English they did speak came out. They called me a ducking whore and a ducking itch, etc. Nasty stuff, and I was really quite scared. I was knocking on the door really hard at this point, but after insulting me and laughing they walked off towards a busy road. I watched as they walked out into the traffic, waving their arms at the cars to stop for them, then giving the drivers the finger. Suddenly one of the cars stopped and 4 big guys got out. One of the nasty dudes ran off, but the big man got caught and shoved hard against the car a couple of times, clearly hurting his head and elbow. Then one of the car guys made out that he was going to punch him big time, drawing his fist far back. The little sheep just covered his face and screamed. They didn't get it, but the car guys and a lot of passers-by burst out laughing. They let him go and he ran away. That felt good. Woman on a cell phone runs me off the road. Flips me off for laying on the horn. The road dead ends a mile up the road. She was going right and I was a ways back going left. A van was in front of her at the red light and she just plows into the back of it. I slow down as I passed with the window down. Running me off the road wasn't enough to get your attention. Huh. She flips out. I laugh and drive off into the sunset. My old manager was a monster. Belittled people. Made a hostile environment. Denied anything that would make co-workers happy while giving himself every comfort. Even denied me a half day to go to my mother's funeral. Adding, "Would it be a big deal if you couldn't go?" He finally stepped on his big dig after he wrote up a fictitious counseling statement about someone and the entire office revolted. The manager wasn't fired like we wanted, but he was relieved. So in comes the new manager. Very well regarded. 20-year Air Force veteran, retired at E9. Humble guy who knew how to handle people. We have our first awkward team meeting. Old manager bitterly in attendance. As the new manager is giving his nice to meet you speech, he sees the douchebag glaring around the table trying to intimidate people. He stops talking, pauses for a few seconds, and then says, "You know, when I was in the Air Force I learned that if you take care of your people, they'll take care of you." He then stared directly at the old manager and said, "And if you don't take care of your people, they'll take care of you." When my ex-husband, who stole $4,000 from me to go visit his mistress in another country, called me to beg for money, actually my credit card number, as if, because his lights got cut off. I can see you sitting there grinning ear to ear, drinking a glass of wine, just flipping the lights on and off. Actually, at the time, I kind of actually considered it. had to call support to talk me down. Excuse me. I need to find an overdue glass of wine and flip some switches. My brother was making fun of an old man slowly shuffling across a parking lot. Look at Speedy Gonzales or something, and 2 seconds after my brother, bashes his foot on the cement parking barrier. He limped back to the car as I laughed hysterically. Driving to Chicago and a crazy guy is road raging, swerving erratically while yelling about shooting us. He zooms off. 5 or so miles later we see his van upside down in the ditch. He's standing on the shoulder talking to a cop. On my drive back from school I witnessed a car run a red light in front of a cop. The car was subsequently pulled over. I pointed laughing and then immediately smashed into the car in front of me. Once, I spit my gum out on the floor in the hallway at school. After that class period, I stepped in it. When I was in middle school, this girl threatened to kill me if I ever talked to her brother again. Seriously. The next day she slipped on ice and had to go to the hospital. It was wild. Her brother? What the hell? I could see boyfriend. Still insecure, but it's high school. But her brother? Yay. But this girl hated my guts. She was one of the kids that'd follow me home and throw rocks at me. If I got near her little group she would flip shit and scream at me. Not me, but a friend of me. When looking for a parking spot at his job, he was cut off by another car. The driver jumped out, showed him the bird and shouted, "Sucks to be you, tosser." My friend found another parking spot and went inside to interview a new person for a job at the company. Guess who that person was? Last spring I didn't get a date to the junior prom. I wasn't thrilled, but I figured I'd go stag. I found the perfect dress and was actually really excited. Then my group of friends said I couldn't come with them. Why? I didn't have a date and it would ruin the pictures if I stood by myself. And since I wasn't going to be in the pictures, they said, wouldn't it just be so awkward for me to get ready with them and be at Claudia's, the ringleader, house beforehand? And of course, wouldn't I just be so uncomfortable being the only one in the limo with no boyfriend? And what would I do afterwards anyways? I mean, everyone knows what happens at the parties after prom. So I didn't go at all. Guess whose limo never showed up? I work for a contracted unloading service in a warehouse. One of the guys on my crew is an absolute little itch sometimes. Complains about his work. Tries to leave early every day. Bums cigarettes off everyone without ever bringing his own pack. etc. He even owes some of my other co-workers money, I believe. But I digress. On Thursday, he lost his sheet over a produce load and threw a temper tantrum, kicking boxes, tearing down tall pallets of product, and causing a lot of damage. Right as the site manager walked by his trailer door. Got suspended without pay and was told he is on his last chance with the company. Now it's only a matter of time before he gets fired. Sweet. Sweet. Karma. A co-worker of mine, who I actually like, was riding passenger in a small crane rig. When he got on site he went to get out of the truck and start talking shit. And in the middle of saying hey I didn't know they sent the girl's skull slipped and fell out of the cab and landed face first in the mud. It was insta karma. And quite hilarious. Not my story but my mom's. Apparently when she was a young lass, there was a girl at school who was always a major age to her. Hated my mom for whatever reason and always made fun of her. Fast forward to my mom as a college-aged woman now dating a guitarist from Bob Marley's band. Out at a bar with him getting a drink. Dude goes to the bathroom and said itch from back in the day comes up to my mom and says, "OMG. Did you see who was here?" At that moment, dude comes and puts his arm around my mom and says, "Hey babe. What's happening?" She said the look on that girl's face was priceless. This is from my younger years. A friend of mine had a cousin visiting around Victoria Day in Canada, aka Firecracker Day. When I went to visit him, I was told he was in the backyard. I go back there and he and his cousin are setting off firecrackers. They have a big bowl of loose firecrackers. I ask if I can set a couple off as well, and both my friend and his cousin start tossing lit firecrackers at me while laughing. I figure that they are both acting like greedy assholes. So I decided to leave. Just as I'm about to leave, a spark gets into the bowl. The entire bowl of firecrackers ignite, leaving only a few unexploded. This lasted about 10 or 15 seconds. The stunned look on my friend and cousin's face was pure karma as a rick. I'm laughing at them. I'm sure they planned a whole afternoon of setting them off. On a trip backpacking around Greece once, I had a bad experience in a hotel and decided to take one of their beautifully painted stone eggs from the bowl in the reception as compensation. When we were on the ferry to the next island, I started noticing a horrible smell coming from my bag. It turns out that it was not a stone egg at all, but a painted boiled egg that had broken in my bag. The whole thing had become so rotten it had turned a nice shade of green and the smell was almost intolerable. I had to borrow a lot of my friend's clothes for the rest of the trip, but at least it taught me a good lesson. Had a moron driver in a Porsche convertible tailgating me on a 6-lane highway. I wasn't in the far right lane, but I was in the middle, so he still could have passed if he wanted to. He finally passes me and blows his horn at me as he blows past. We get on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge and it immediately starts torrentially pouring. There was nowhere for him to stop, so he had to drive a several mile long bridge with his top down the whole way. With glee, I ran over a bee on my tricycle once. Aimed for it on purpose and then splat. Minutes later I got called into the house and I stepped on that same bee. Stuck with stinger up in my bare feet. It hurt so badly. I told my mom everything and she told me I got exactly what I deserved. I agreed. Ex-wife cheated on me while I was deployed. Drained our bank accounts. And sold all my tools, 2 snap-on rollaways filled with tools. After we divorced, she lost her job. Totaled her car. The guy she cheated with left her. Her mom died and she lost her apartment. Yeah, karma can be a rick. A classmate in school broke one of his legs and was using crutches. He was about to go down the stairs and another kid kicked one of his crutches down the stairs. I walked down there and got his crutch for him, and while walking back up, the kid who kicked the crutches came tumbling down and I moved out of the way. The kid broke his arm. A cyclist flew through a red light at an intersection and I almost clobbered him. I'm used to these guys, so I just harumphed and slowed down. This guy cuts me off again and flicks me off in the same motion. I used to be a smoker and a litterer back then, so in my frustration I flicked my butt out my window and put both hands on the wheel. The butt caught the wind and flicked back into the cyclist's face, causing him to crash into the median. I'm not too happy about how satisfying it is still thinking about it. Late to the party, but this happened to me. When I was younger, high school, my city had automatic sprinklers in most of the parks and areas with grass. They would turn on automatically at like 3 or 4 AM. So being a young dumb kid, me and my friends figured out if you kicked them hard enough the top would break off and the sprinkler would full force shoot a huge stream into the air from then on. We thought it was hilarious and were never caught. We kept on with this until one day they started replacing them with new super strong steel ones. I kicked one and broke my big toe, and while in agony rolled my ankle so ducking bad it was bruised up for a week and has never been the same.